Okay, we're back again. Before diving into the details, I want to give you an overview of all the modules in Orthohack. Now, Orthohack is written in C language, but a lot of the information that it emits is designed to be very easily ported to other languages. In fact, it's got a mode where you can actually see all of the transactions that your custom transform does, and you can optimize them any way that you like. So unlike all the other FFT modules out there that I'm aware of, or any other Orthobasis transform modules for that matter that I'm aware of, Orthohack is really, really simple. It doesn't pull in a whole lot of extra third-party libraries and so forth. Now, I should say Orthohack itself is quite complicated, but the transform that it emits is really tight and small, and I think generally pretty easy to understand. So let's get into it. So the first thing is the Orthohack preprocessor. This is the workhorse of the whole machine that actually figures out all the common expressions that it can pull out of those orthobasis vectors that I talked about in the first video. And it finds all the common terms and does numerical smoothing and denoising and all this other stuff. And it emits an OHK file, an Orthohack file. And the OHK file basically gives the structure of the entire transform and a list of numbers, constants, that are used to actually accomplish the transform. So then the OHK file goes into the post-processor in the second step. And the post-processor basically does some further consolidation and optimization, cache optimization being one of them. And it spits out this orthohack.h, which contains all the description you need to actually do the transform, including the number lists and everything. But the difference is that, unlike the OHK file, it's been a lot more refined, and similar terms have been combined a little bit more. It's kind of hard to describe, but basically this is a more distilled version of this. And this is also a C language type include file, although it's just pure constants and it would be very easy to port to any other language. So in the third step, we take the include file and we pump it into the verifier. And the verifier is really cool. It does a few very useful things. One of the things that it does is it says, okay, well, if we go back to the original database of orthobasis vectors, in a perfect world of infinite numerical precision, then if we took your transform, an orthobasis transform, assuming it is an orthobasis transform, not just any old transform, right? If we took an orthobasis transform of one of those vectors, then we should get a coefficient equal to 1 in the output corresponding to that orthobasis vector and a 0 everywhere else. And based on this assumption, it's very easy to see what the maximum error and the mean squared error is of the transform with respect to various orthobases. Now obviously if you used any old signal, the error might be slightly different, but it gives you a really good idea of how close you are. And in my experience, the error's been on the order of 1 in 10 to the minus 12, 10 to the minus 13. So it's been quite useful. The other thing though that the verifier does is we support fixed point in Orthohack, and it looks for the minimum and maximum possible fixed point coefficients. And in the smallest allowable fixed point topology, it also checks the entire transform for any overflows in addition, multiplication, or negation. So it does a formal verification to ensure that you're never going to get into an undefined situation in C, which is a signed overflow. And you wouldn't want to overflow anyway if it were defined. So that's what the verifier does. Some people will be really interested in the literalizer. So the literalizer also takes the transform described in orthohack.h, and we pump out this file, which I call ortholiteral.c. And actually, this isn't much of a C file. All it is a listing, a long, long listing of 4 different very simple operations consisting of an add and a multiply, or a subtract and a multiply. And it just tells every single step, literally, that the transform does. And if you combine the listing in ortholiteral.c with the data tables that are in orthohack.h, some of them are binary, but some of them are human readable, floating point human readable data, you can very easily extract all that information, optimize it any way you want yourself, and port it to another language. I mean, it's a matter of reparsing to convert this, for instance, into Java or some other language. So it's designed to be very, very accessible, no operating system calls, none of this nonsense, just really simple. Okay? And then the transformer. The last thing is the transformer. The transformer is the workhorse and the whole point of Orthohack. This is the thing that actually accomplishes the transform that you've asked it to do. And so the inputs to this are obviously a set of sample points that comprise a signal, and the number of sample points is equal to the number of sample points in all of those orthobasis vectors we had in the database. And also orthohack.h, which of course encapsulates the entire transform in data tables and constants. And basically the transformer then spits out a coefficient list, which is of course the answer to the transform that you asked it. And it comes in a couple different flavors. First of all, we have a so-called number, capital number. And a number is just a floating point number. I like to use double precision. You might like long doubles or super duper doubles. It doesn't matter. This is all quite precision abstract. The next thing it allows is a fixed. A fixed is 32 bits of integer and 32 bits of fraction. It's a little bit slower than floating point in a tightly pipelined environment, but frankly, I think it's worth it because floating point in many languages, including C, is technically undefined because a lot of the weird subtleties of rounding the last bit and all this stuff, and denormals and silent nans and quiet nans and all this silly junk. And I'd rather stay away from this because it's not verifiable. I just use floating point as an intermediate to kind of get me to the canned, provable type floating point, fixed point transform that I really want. And for those that don't need a lot of precision, maybe you've got a small transform, like an audio transform you're trying to do, but you want to do it fast, custom is your best friend. Custom fixed point is just like fixed point, but it's got a tunable binary place. So what you can do is you can move the binary point back and forth to try to get yourself as much fraction bits as possible until the verifier complains that you've got an overflow. So you've got a formal verification supporting a very efficient numerical format here for your calculation. And finally, we have for each one of these, we have a by 1 and by 8 transform. The by 1 just basically reads an instruction from the transform database and it does it. You know, it's a multiply add. And it reads another instruction, does a multiply add. And this is quite tedious. So if you want to speed things up and you're willing to do a little bit of geometry shuffling, if you do it 8 wide, in other words 8 transforms at the same time, this is quite a bit faster. It's at least like a factor of 2 faster per transform. I found. And currently, this is not SIMD, single instruction, multiple data, but it could easily be morphed into that. Right now, it's just tightly pipelined, so it's really portable. There's no assembly language, nothing like that. And again, the transformer is written in a way that, although it's kind of long, is actually really, I think, easy to understand and quite easy to port to other languages. So that's it. I'll continue in the next video.